Warning: the following broadcast is not approved by your teacher, university, politician, or government. Side effects may include skepticism, better reasoning skills, liberty, peace, and an escape from the woke.
Welcome to the show. I am your host, LB Muniz, and this is the Been Awake podcast for better sense making. You know, normally a lot of people out there, they will, they'll send an email out or post it on social media when they want to go live. Not me. I just decided to go live. Anyway, got a couple episodes in the can already. I figured I would at least do the recordings of these live, even if they're not going to get released right away. But hey, if you are one of those people tuning in and this is the first time you've ever checked out the show, do me a favor, if you would be so kind. Do me a favor. Head on over to beenawake.com, subscribe with your email address. That'll take you to the Substack. That's kind of like the home. You can also find me on Locals, Patreon, and of course on X and Instagram. There's a Facebook page too, but I never check that. So what's up, everybody? This is going to be a fun episode and a little bit of a departure. Normally we talk, not even a departure, because this show is about making better sense of things, and that's exactly what we're going to do today. But a lot of times on the show, I'm covering more current events, things that are political in nature a lot of times, and this episode is going to be far more spiritual, religious, theological. I guess we'll see. We'll see where it ends up. But there's going to be a little bit of analysis as well of advertising, marketing, sales, copy, and why I don't think those things mix well with religion, or to the extent that they mix well, one must be above the other. So if you saw the graphic for this episode, you might already guess what we're going to be talking about here. The Super Bowl was a couple of weeks ago as I'm recording this, and I was at a friend's house, a friend of my girlfriend's actually. So not people I know particularly well, but people I like nonetheless, new people. And we were watching the Super Bowl. And of course, a lot of the advertisements are just as much a part of the Super Bowl as anything else. And there was one in particular, there was a few that caught my eye, but there was one in particular that I visibly scoffed at. And when somebody quipped later, well, we already had the Christian ad, we already had this ad, I'm like, well, that's not a Christian ad. And of course, it was the ad from He Gets Us. Now, this might have been the first time you had seen them. I think they ran something last year too at the Super Bowl that was a little bit different. This might be the first time that you've come across this organization. This might not be the first time you might have seen these things. I think the first time I saw this campaign, if you will, and that's exactly what it is. It's a campaign. I think the first time I saw this campaign was on a billboard. And what they basically do is they use just simple text on a lot of these things. Of course, we're going to be analyzing a video here, but they'll use simple text and they'll kind of just talk about, well, Jesus had problems with his friends too. He gets us. Jesus knew what it was to suffer. He gets us. It's kind of one of those things is you look at that as a person of faith. And if you're not a person of faith, I think there's still plenty here for you to listen to and learn about, because I think a lot of times there's very few people that I think that are it's like, people, when they go more down a more religious track, they have a tendency to stay, within that lane. And then you have people who take a more secular track. And not that I bridge that gap, but certainly as somebody who has an interest in philosophy and also an interest in theology and God and religion and those kinds of things, I think there's a unique insight that can come. So if you're somebody who's like, I don't like religious talk, stay tuned. I think you're going to enjoy this episode. And if you don't, let me know in the comments on X, if you would be so kind. So they ran this. So I would see these billboards and I was kind of like, whoa, who is this? Right? Like, what organization is putting this message out there? Because it's a little strange. It's not Exactly right. And that's one of the things that always struck that's one of the things that has always stuck out to me about these campaigns, about the advertisements that this He Gets Us organization put out. So I can remember like looking up the website while I was driving and taking a look and being like, what is this? Is kind of weird. And then, but like kind of then just going about my business, going about my day. And so when this ad came out at the Super Bowl, I was like, oh, well, here's a great opportunity to talk about it. I think in the past, if I'm not mistaken, their previous ad had more to do with in last year's Super Bowl had more to do with just kind of like, hey, we should all kind of come together. And I think a lot of people saw it and they went on their way because frankly, I don't remember it very much. Well, that's not what happened this year. This year they went entirely evocative, and they certainly made a splash, right? And so because of that, I wrote a piece at beenawake.com that I called, and this episode is going to be mostly talking about that article that I wrote. And I wrote an article and it was entitled Jesus Wasn't Born to Get Us. This entire thing is, in my mind, some of the strangest. It's like, I think I wrote to a friend because we were talking about this after I published the article, and I said it's banal at worst, right? It's just kind of it's like cotton candy. I'm gonna pull up the exact thing here. I didn't think I was gonna say this, but I want to get it right because I definitely wrote it well. Let's see, what did I say? Let's see here. It was like basically at worst, this is heresy, right? That's what this is at worst. It's heretical in nature. All right, if I can't find this here, it's not a big deal. The failure is multifold. And let's see. Whatever. I can't find it. Sorry. But it's heresy at worst, right? It's an instant mistake at best, and it's heresy at worst. And we'll get into this more during the piece, but I want to at least point out that I'm not saying you can't take the story of Jesus or look at Jesus as he walked the earth in any kind of a historical or academic sense. There is definitely a place for that. That's not what the He Gets Us campaign is doing. So let's watch the ad real quick. It's a 1-minute ad, and then we'll kind of start reading the piece and we'll do our analysis. So let's do that now. So this ad uses a bunch of images. There's 11 images going across the screen. And in each of the images, somebody is washing the foot of another person. Just kind of want to watch it so that it's here. And then we'll kind of go image by image. And of course, there's nice music in the background. You were there. So it's like this nice piano, a beautiful voice. It's a song you kind of know, but you don't know it very well. And at the end, music crescendos. Jesus didn't teach hate. He washed feet. And this is their campaign. They do a lot of different things. Jesus, with the thing at the end. So that's the advertisement, right? And let's skip for now breaking down each of the individual images, and I want to talk about getting your attention, because that's what this ad is designed to do, right? And I've talked about this in an episode that's going to be released as well, because I've done another piece on the Super Bowl, and like it or not, the Super Bowl is still a pretty big cultural phenomenon. I mean, even somebody like myself, I'm not really somebody who follows the professional sports and certainly not professional football, I still like watching the Super Bowl because it's an excuse to get together with people, eat some food, have a couple drinks, and have a nice time. And, hopefully enjoy a good game. And I didn't think the game was that bad. I guess it depends on what team you were rooting for. But hey, subscribe to the podcast because I got another episode about that coming out soon, coming out on the 1st of March, actually. I already recorded it. So before we kind of get into some of the theological analysis, right? Let's get some of the mechanics of advertising out of the way before we engage in a more serious analysis. And when it comes to advertising, attention is everything. I don't think that's a controversial statement to say. There's a reason why companies and apparently nonprofits, which is always interesting to me, the whole like nonprofit distinction, because there's a lot of money in nonprofits, will spend millions of dollars to run their advertisement during the Super Bowl. People are watching, right? And it's one of those few times, especially these days with streaming services and advertising has changed so much over the last 10 years. It's one of the few times where people will sit and watch the commercials because they used to be a big deal. The form of advertising has changed since the height of Madison Street, a la Mad Men, but the basic principles have remained the same. If no one pays attention to your message, then you're not going to sell your product. From a mechanical perspective, this campaign, this advertisement, clearly accomplished its mission for He Gets Us. As many people have commented positively, I'm sure, and negatively about the image and overall message of the video. While I would argue the advertisement's method was effective, it remains to be seen whether it was right. So let's now move. I want to do a quick, let's go through these images, right, that they put in this advertisement. So the first one is kind of, it's like this 1950s home, and you've got this guy with like bleach blonde hair and like literally bleached hair, and he's washing the feet of like maybe his dad, maybe his father-in-law or girlfriend's father, something like that. It's kind of weird. All of these images are weird. Let's just, for whatever else we might say later, they're all just kind of strange and none of them really make any sense. And we're going to get to why that is. The next image is like, for some reason, we're in an alley and this black guy has his foot up on a milk crate. And then there's a cop who's washing his feet, who's like pouring water over his feet. And I don't know, like, I guess the implication is that this guy's like a criminal of some kind, and or something like that. And like the cop's got his lights on in the background, so he clearly tried to stop this guy. I don't know which shoes were his. I guess that's the cop shoes here. So everybody's barefoot for some reason in these things. I'm not really sure why. Again, but this imagery is consistent. Our next image has two high school girls, one of whom is like got like this short dyed red hair. The other one has a very traditional blonde look. She's the cheerleader. The other one is not a cheerleader. She's probably like the one that kind of like in the back of class and doesn't really say anything. I don't know. Again, they're both barefoot. Again, weird, like not an environment that you would be barefoot, and she's pouring water over her feet in front of the trophies at this fictitious high school. The next image takes us, and if you're listening, by the way, you can go and you can watch this on YouTube, Rumble, or X if you're listening to this later on. But I'm describing each image kind of in motion. This next image, we've got this middle-aged white guy who's kind of got like a grizzled look, right? Like, they're on this set of some kind. You can kind of see as you move into the background that it's like this whole thing is painted, including this truck. But then the foreground here is definitely definitely some kind of a movie set, right? So like we've got that, and then there's this like Native American dude, and they're kind of the same age. And then for some reason, not even though it's nighttime, they're not by their fire, which is all the way painted in the background. So instead, they decided to walk over here where this basin just happened to be standing next to some lavender plants. I think that's lavender at least. And they were, and so again, the white guy is washing the Native American's feet. The next one, we got a motel, and we've got and we're in front of a family planning clinic, aka an abortion clinic, right? That's what that means. And there's kind of like people. Let's see, there's people back here. Oops. Don't want to jump ahead. There's people back here, and they're like probably holding signs. They're holding signs that say "Save the Unborn," and we kind of have this older, middle-aged white woman, and she's washing the feet of like this younger girl, who's like a young girl, but like for some reason wearing overalls like a child, and again, both barefoot. Kind of weird. That I don't really see. I don't We're going to get into like the ritual of Maud and the washing of feet, at least in the Catholic Church, because that's the church I know. But like when that happens, the priest doesn't take his shoes off. I don't know why I'm fixated on this right now, but it's as I'm looking at these images, I'm kind of struck by it again. So, and she's washing the foot. I guess presumably the concept of this is that she's a woman with an unplanned pregnancy of some kind, and this other woman was maybe a protester inside of it, and she's trying to wash their feet. The next one, we have two women, one younger, one older, maybe a mom and a daughter. And this is clearly the woman on the right's house, and she looks very haggard. And if you look around, there's a bunch of there's like some cigarettes, and then there's some alcohol bottles all over the place here. And so it's like an addict's house, and again, she's washing the feet of this woman. And the next one, we're almost done. The next one is there's a bus. Oh, it says Chicago, where I'm from. And we see some people off to the side here with like bags and jugs of water, and their clothes are dirty because these are migrants, I guess, or refugees or people who cross the border, and they're in like suburbia. And again, we have the middle-aged white woman who's decided to wash the feet of this young girl who's holding a very young baby. Such a young baby that nobody would dare take the journey that people are taking with that young of a baby. It would be almost impossible. But hey, I guess it's good for effect. Our next one, we're still in suburbia here, and we have a young woman who's wearing a hijab, so a Muslim woman, presumably her husband, perhaps her brother. I'm going to guess her husband. And another middle-aged white woman who's in a very frumpy housewife dress, washing her feet as like the husband is sitting here in a weird chair, eating an apple for some reason. It's one of those things like, if you don't go through these images in particular, you're just kind of struck by it, and hey, whatever. And then we got something about like the middle of the protest. It says shut him up here. It says silence hate, no censorship. And people are there's 1, 2, 3 bullhorns. This guy's got 4 bullhorns. This guy's got a mask. And then there's this like young black woman. And in the piece, I called this woman ethnically ambiguous because I couldn't quite tell I couldn't guess. So I'm not going to guess. And then, the black woman is washing her feet, again, both barefoot for some reason. Also wearing boots with no socks. That's kind of strange. There's not a lot are there any socks in these images? Let's not belabor that. And then we've got this southern kind of scene. This is some kind of cabin maybe in the middle of the woods. We got a basset hound chilling here, and then we've got these 2 old guys, one white, one black, both with their feet in a tub. So not really sure who's washing whose feet in this one, but hey, I don't think it's really relevant. And then, like maybe the wife or the daughter sitting here in the background. Like this almost makes it look like they're together, but hey, what do I know? And then finally, the coup de grace, the final one that they did, we have this scene on a beach, and we have a very flamboyant gay man with a man dressed as a priest or a pastor and the pastor is washing the gay man's feet, again, both barefoot, but apparently, again, the gay guy was riding roller skates with no socks. And that's the image. Those are the images. Those are the 11 images that are in this advertisement. So yeah, it was one of those things. It was very jarring. It was very weird for me to see this. And it was just kind of a reminder of like, hey, yeah, there's this weird group out there. Apparently they have enough money to buy Super Bowl ads. Why are they doing this, and why are they doing it this way? Well, if you go to the website, as I did, for your sake, they these people have an agenda. Right? They say it, right? If you go to the About Us, they say they have an agenda. Before we get into that, though, I want to let's read this section of the piece. So I'm often reminded of a particular scene from the Book of Eli, and if you've never seen the Book of Eli, I'd recommend it. It comes up on Max every now and again, or on HBO. So I've when I'm traveling, I'll catch it in hotels a lot. I remember watching it in the theater and just kind of being like, "Oh, this is a cool movie with Denzel Washington where he kicks some butt," and then like I really enjoyed the message, and I think there's a worthwhile message inside of here for us that I want to share with you. So if you don't know the movie, there's Denzel Washington plays this guy Eli, who's walking across a barren wasteland that was the United States of America. There was some kind of an apocalypse, nuclear holocaust, and all that kind of stuff. So now everything is desert. There's not a lot of water, and there's no civilization to speak of. And he comes into this town, and this town is run by this guy Carnegie, or this guy who calls himself Carnegie, who's played by Gary Oldman. And there's a scene where Gary Oldman says the following. He says and in this scene, it's discovered that the guy has a Bible and he wants the Bible. And this is why he wants the Bible. He says, it's not a fucking book. It's a weapon aimed at the hearts and minds of the weak and the desperate. It will give us control of them. If we want to rule more than one small fucking town, we have to have it. People will come from all over. They'll do exactly what I tell them if the words are from the book. It's happened before and it'll happen again. All we need is that book. The book he's talking about, as I said, is the Bible. In the portrayed post-apocalyptic world, Bibles have been burned before a nuclear catastrophe ruined civilization save one. The Bible carried by the protagonist Eli, who was guided by a voice to go west. Carnegie believed that if he could have this book in his possession, he could solidify the stranglehold he held over the people of his town and continue to conquer. If you go to hegetsus.com, you'll find a page entitled He Gets Us Has an Agenda. Like most of their website and everything they do, they're trying to pitch you the way one might stand in a Costco selling satellite TV service. You've probably seen these people. They're also in Walmarts, right? They're like kind of just standing there and they smile at you like, hey, man, do you pay for internet? It's like, yeah, I pay for internet. Well, I can save you money. It's like, yeah, but I like my internet service, right? Or like they'll sell like power plans with the things like, well, you're already paying the power company, but if you pay us a little bit more, we can do it. Now, I'm not knocking those people. Everybody's got to have a job. A lot of those guys are hustlers, and I'm sure their product can help people, but they're always doing a hard sell every single time. Hard sell if they can get your attention for 3 seconds, they're going to tell you exactly why you should buy with them. And that's what He Gets Us does. Everything they do is a marketing and sales pitch. And in fact, if we were to go over to their LinkedIn page, they would say we're like a conglomerate of marketers and people like that who are trying to promote a message. They tout the fact that they're all marketers and people who are trying to sell and advertise He Gets Us as a product. The page reads like a sales letter, quoting, "Our agenda at He Gets Us is to move beyond the mess of our current cultural moment to a place where all of us are invited to rediscover the love story of Jesus, Christians, non-Christians, and everybody in between. All of us. Anyone who would deny that there is power in the words of the Bible is a fool. You're a fool if you don't believe that there's power in the words of the Bible." That's like only the most edgy, cringiest teenage atheist would say anything like that. The question before us isn't whether these words can hold sway over the minds of men, but what those speaking his words intend to do. He Gets Us says the following in that regard. So this is what they're trying to do. Quoting, Our work represents the input from Christians who believe that Jesus is the Son of God, as well as many others who, though not Christian, share a deep admiration for the man that Jesus was, and we are deeply inspired and curious to explore his story. We look at the biography of Jesus through a modern lens to find new relevance in often overlooked moments and themes from his life. In other words, screw tradition. We're only going to use the postmodern progressive lens of the last 50 years to interpret a story that has been told for over 2,000. Doesn't that sound like everything wrong with modern movies and TV? So who's behind this? The group now behind He Gets Us is called Come Near. And according to their website, Come Near is a new nonprofit organization led by a team of experienced, see, this is what I'm talking about, led by a team of experienced marketing, innovation, and nonprofit leaders committed to sharing the life and love of Jesus in thought-provoking new ways. So only his life and only his love. Come Near leads all aspects of the He Gets Us movement in partnership with a dedicated network of collaborators. Of course, that doesn't really tell us much about who's behind this. It's more sloganeering. However, it has been reported in multiple outlets that the main donors behind these organizations is the family behind Hobby Lobby, the crafts chain led by David Green. Green is reportedly an evangelical Christian, and he has used his money to further the message of Jesus as he sees it. Of course, you might also remember that Hobby Lobby, at the passing of the Affordable Care Act, was the group behind it that pushed that challenged the mandate for contraceptive. Right, the Affordable Care Act said that it was mandated that every company had to provide contraception as part of their health insurance plans, and then they went up to the Supreme Court. Interesting putting that in frame of retrospect of like where it went to the Supreme Court, you got like a half good decision, and then now they're kind of putting this out there. So what's the problem? All right, what's the problem with this? Jesus was a loving person. Jesus did preach love, right? Isn't that the golden rule? Love your neighbor as yourself, or love one another as I have loved you, right? We simplify that to love your neighbor as yourself. So why am I making a big deal about this, and why do I have an entire part of this article entitled "The Problem"? Well, there's many reasons, but let's start with our definition of leftism. What does that have to do with it? Well, we'll get there. So there's a few different definitions of the left and the right that we can use. I think the one that works best is leftism is belief without limit. It's maximal liberation, maximal egalitarianism. But without limit is the one that I like to use. And by limit, I literally mean that there's an edge. There's a line there's a line that you don't cross. Everything that, if we go back to their website here for a second, everything on the He Gets Us website, let's go to their content, and then I'll pull it up on the screen for you guys, all content. Everything that these guys do, like I said in the piece, it has like this, everything has the language of progressivism in it, the language of postmodernism is in it, the language of the woke in it, right? Whatever word we want to use. It says, loving your neighbor is nearly impossible. How can we do it? What is foot washing? How did Jesus step over barriers of race, gender, and stigma on the side of the road? Who is my neighbor? Jesus relied on the kindness of strangers too. Jesus taught us to say hard things. Jesus' Christmas wasn't picture perfect either. Listen louder. Jesus welcomed the weird. Jesus was exclusively inclusive, right? It's like, what are we saying here? Jesus experienced every human emotion. Do you want to be rich? Is hope a dangerous thing? Blah, 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 blah. The problem with this kind of messaging is that it doesn't put a limit on the story of Jesus. And more importantly, it doesn't and I guess you could also say it doesn't ground the story of Jesus where it's supposed to be set. So let's go on. There's nothing wrong. Let's start here. There's nothing wrong with using one's wealth and business to promote deeply held beliefs. But there are problems with He Gets Us and the way they are attempting to redefine the message of Jesus Christ. As we've seen above, the group is not concerned with proving the divinity of Christ to people or even asking people to believe in it. Instead, they want to portray the life of Jesus as a timeless love story like Cinderella or Snow White. It is true. Let me make sure this is very clear to people listening. especially if you're coming across this and you've never listened to my show before. It is true that God loves us. He loves all of us. We are his creation, and we are called to worship him. This is the basic belief of most faith. This is the basic belief most faith traditions hold. Just start very general there. Pretty much every faith tradition believes some version of this. Right? Even the ancient polytheistic Greeks believed this of a kind. It's also true that politics corrupts, especially our modern mass democracy in the West. What separates Christians, however, is belief in the divinity of Jesus Christ, who was truly God and truly man. To remove him from this context in any kind of evangelizing effort is incorrect. The reason why Jesus could love so unconditionally and be such an example to his followers across millennia isn't because he was an exceptionally good human. It's because he was Lord. Anyone attempting to bring people back to Jesus, or even back to the story of Jesus, who admit on their website that they aren't primarily concerned with his divinity, should be met with a high degree of skepticism. Now, plenty of religious and non-religious people alike have done historic Hi, everybody. Apparently, I died. Am I really going to have to do the rest of this without my background? Hey, StreamYard, I paid y'all money, and you guys suck. All right. Well, sorry, you're going to have to deal with the green screen because I'm already 34 minutes into this. Where was I? The reason why Jesus could love so unconditionally and be such an example to his followers across millennia isn't because he was an exceptionally good human. It's because he was the Lord. Anyone attempting to bring people back to Jesus who admit on their website they aren't primarily concerned with his divinity should be met with a high degree of skepticism. Plenty of religious and non-religious people alike have done historical and biographical work on Jesus without commenting on his godliness. But He Gets Us wants you to engage with his message and love in some kind of weird, new age spiritual way. Love is a word that has many meanings. In the English-speaking world, we wrap all of these up into a four-letter word, and when one word has so many definitions, it can be twisted. Taking this, we begin to see that while the sloganeering employed by He Gets Us may capture our attention, it quite literally gives us an incorrect image. The washing of the feet found in the Bible happens at the Last Supper, where Jesus washes the feet of his apostles. In traditional Hebrew society, this would have been a task beneath the stature of a great teacher like Jesus. And yet, when his apostles confronted him with this, he said, quoting from the good book, "Do you know what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for so I am. If I then, the Lord and the teacher, washed your feet, you ought to wash one another's feet. For I gave you an example that you also should do as I did to you. Truly, truly, I say to you, a slave is not greater than his master, nor is one who is sent greater than one who sent him. If you know these things, you are blessed if you do them." Jesus in the Bible washed the feet of his closest followers, those whom he chose out of countless disciples to spread his word after his passion. Why can't I say that word? In the apostolic tradition, this is practiced during Holy Week, the ritual of washing the feet, where a priest will ceremoniously wash the feet of parishioners. Humbling himself the way Jesus did, the ritual is a reminder that we are one in Christ. Christians are called to minister to the poor, sick, and downtrodden, but the specific ritual of washing feet is not a part of this for a very important reason. To put it simply, Jesus didn't get us. Jesus saved us. Jesus dined with tax collector and prostitutes. Yes, this is true. He took people who were, using a modern language, on the margins of society. But those people didn't remain tax collectors, and they didn't remain prostitutes. They did not remain what they were, but they became who they should be. Without this basic understanding of the passion, death, and resurrection, one can hardly call their mission Christian. And I say that about the He Gets Us campaign. In the wake of this ad's airing, there was a counter ad, if you will, that circulated. It offers the openness of Christ's love in a theologically sound way. It's worth watching to see how applying the same principles of advertising can broadcast the same message of love and can be portrayed in a way that reflects the message of the gospel. Before we watch this video, it's kind of a quick, personal story. A few years ago, if you go, you can look up Catholics Come Home. It's a beautiful ad campaign that the Catholic Church put on a number of years ago, and a couple of my family members were involved in the filming and kind of producing of that stuff. And it's great. And it does, and again, so it's not to say that you can't use the principles of, you can't use marketing tactics and sales tactics and advertising tactics to broadcast a spiritual message, a religious message, a theologically sound message. However, like everything, and as the Bible says, you can't serve two masters. One must reign supreme. My biggest issue with He Gets Us is the fact that they're trying to water down a message, and it doesn't work. If you go to any kind of a left-wing site, and a few of these reels got sent to me, it says, "Don't believe this advertisement. It's bigots behind it." Right? It's already bad people are behind this thing, so don't even pay attention to it. And that's that was, again, that's the issue I have with these people, right? If we go onto their website right here, how did the story of Jesus, the world's greatest love story, get twisted into a tool to harm, judge, and divide? Well, it was the enemies. It wasn't Christians who did it. Yeah, there's a lot of people who call themselves Christians who don't live a very Christian life. It's because we're all sinners. But He Gets Us start from this point, right? And why we always talk about on the show, where you start a story matters. Our entry point to conversations matter. And they're giving up the game in the beginning here. How did the story of Jesus, the world's greatest love story, get twisted into a tool to harm, judge, and divide? Because there are people out there who reject His story of love. Most of those people aren't followers. And there's been countless dollars spent to call to question the story of Jesus. Now, again, I'm not a very preachy guy. I'm not a priest. I'm not a pastor. I'm not a theologian. I am a man of faith. And I understand that these things get complicated. And I understand that people struggle with the idea of God and they struggle with their faith. But the answer to that isn't to throw out the baby with the bathwater, as they do right here. How did it get twisted? Because people purposefully tried to twist it. And they've done that over at least the last 100-something years. It's been happening since the beginning. So it bothers me. It bothers me that people would act like this. And and that's the problem I have with this advertisement. So let's watch this little video here. I think it's good. They use the same audio. So let's start this over. So it starts out, it's using the same stuff, and it says former witch, Dawkins, former right-hand man,
don't ask
former jihadist,
what you know is
former
true.
KKK member,
Don't have to tell.
former drug addict,
I love
former
your
gang leader,
precious heart.
former drag queen and prostitute,
I was there.
former abortionist,
You were
former
there.
transgender,
Two worlds
former porn
collided.
star,
And
former New Age
never
guru,
tear us apart.
former lesbian activist. It ends with Jesus doesn't just get us, he saves us.
We can live
He transforms, restores, heals, delivers, loves us.
for 1,000
Such were some of you. Such were some of you. So that's, again, what I like about that. What I like about that counter ad, right, is that it shows the difference of how you can produce something and still remain true to the actual message of Christ. And I think that's an important message for our modern day. But I think that's about all the time we have for today's episode. Do me a favor, if you would be so kind. Come on over to subscribe to the email address. If you like this, follow me on social media at LB Muniz.
If you like what you heard today, go to beenawake.com to subscribe for future updates. My name is LB Muniz, and I am not one with the woke.